How to praise rather than despair. In Habakkuk 3:18, it says, "Yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will take joy in the God of my salvation." I see several different posts about hoping that the new year isn't a dumpster fire. Other people have put out warnings to approach 2026 with caution and not to stir up any bad omens. With all that's going on in the world, people are worried about the future in the coming year. There are uncertainties in the world, and many of those uncertainties bring fear and anxiety. But we have something better that we can focus on, and that's God. We cannot control what happens in the world around us, but we can control how we handle it. We can control how we interact with God and trust in Him. Regardless of what is thrown at us in this next year, we can trust God that we will not be alone when we face it. We need to praise rather than despair. In today's verse, taken from the book of Habakkuk, he emphasizes to Israel to choose joy and trust in God despite the dire circumstances they were in. As Judah was facing an impending devastation, Habakkuk describes a bleak outlook for them in the preceding verse. He described agricultural collapse and ruin in the form of no figs, no grapes or olives, no crops, and even no livestock. Everything was about to change, but he continues and he says the word yet. Despite the agricultural collapse, they have a choice, a deliberate choice to praise rather than despair. He was telling them to focus on God and not the circumstances. Their joy was rooted in the Lord, a promise-keeping, covenant-holding God, to trust in Him rather than in material provision. This requires a faith that transcends visible evidence, a resilient faith that centers praise anchored in God's salvation rather than temporary comfort. Habakkuk teaches us today through this scripture story that true joy flows from God's presence and promises, not in external success. The word yet means to choose faith over fear, to worship despite the hardship, and to trust in God's promises of being with us and trusting in His eternal security that He provides. Habakkuk teaches us that faith is a decision and not a feeling. Even if life collapses around us, even if this new year brings heartaches and uncertainties, joy can be found in God's unchanging nature and saving work. This is an awesome statement that brings hope. Circumstances may fail, but God never does.